Do you, from your side, plan to talk to Trump or his administration and somehow depict him the situation in Ukraine and the situation with the physical lack of Patriot system, not only for Ukraine but the whole world as well, and Europe? Thank you.
Could I start? Because I defend the US here? Because the United States, I believe, is doing what it can in terms of delivering Pac 3 and Pac 2 Patriot missiles to Ukraine.
After Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky appealed for more Patriot systems, NATO chief Mark Rutte defended continued U.S. support for Kyiv. Rutte said the United States is doing all it can to help Ukraine amid growing questions over President Donald Trump's military support policy. Zelensky's appeal for additional Patriot air defense systems has reportedly not received a direct response from Washington so far. Ukraine is facing intensified Russian attacks while grappling with shortages of Patriot missiles needed to protect its skies.
Do you, from your side, plan to talk to Trump or his administration and somehow depict him the situation in Ukraine and the situation with the physical lack of Patriot system, not only for Ukraine but the whole world as well, and Europe? Thank you.
Could I start? Because I defend the US here? Because the United States, I believe, is doing what it can in terms of delivering Pac 3 and Pac 2 Patriot missiles to Ukraine. I really believe that, based on all the evidence I have. And whatever they can supply, they do. The money is there. So I go with my team, cap in hand, amongst European and Canadian allies to get the money. We are successful at that. I would love to see a little bit more of a better burden sharing. It is a couple of allies doing the heavy lifting, but okay, that's my problem. For Ukraine, it is important that the money is there for the interceptors to get them from the United States. The United States keeps on providing them. The US is also still providing all the critical intelligence to Ukraine. So I really want to defend the US here. The problem, of course, here, as the President was saying, is the production rate. So the President, I know myself, we are also in contact with the manufacturers of this equipment. I know the American President is. Not only because of Ukraine, but more generally in NATO. We need to produce more in terms of defense industrial output. The President has been forcing the American companies to quadruple their overall, not only Patriot interceptors, but overall quadruple the defense industrial output. And I met one of these CEOs after they had a meeting in the White House. He was still trembling. So I think the President had been quite forceful there. And I know this President is quite forceful and also discussing with industry. So I think we are all doing what we can. In the meantime, the good news is that this flow of interceptors from the US, despite the war in the Middle East, is continuing.
I truly believe that the strongest option is the United States of America and representatives of Europe, not only the EU, but in a broader sense, representing Europe, be at the negotiating table. But just as I have said, number one for us is to end the war. And there are no alternatives here, which is why I've been saying very openly that we support any format, and I'm ready for direct negotiations with Putin to end this war, rather than wait in line while everybody finishes all of the conflicts in the world and then our turn comes.
You have definitely heard from Ukraine plenty of times that we don't want to compromise, that we cannot compromise on our goal to join NATO. I believe you could also hear that today. What do you see? Is that still valid for NATO? Or, how do you see?
Well, first of all, on NATO, as you know, there is the political and the practical. So allies have been very clear, and this was last time reconfirmed in the NATO summit at the occasion of the 75th birthday of the alliance, that there is this irreversible path of Ukraine into NATO. The practical is that at the moment there's no unanimity on that. So again, then to look at it from a practical perspective, what we are seeing now is that the Ukrainian armed forces are more and more interoperable with NATO. What we are seeing is that when it comes to the standards, we are more and more using the same standards. When it comes to our industry, it's more and more interconnected. We are learning from Ukraine as NATO when it comes to drone and counter-drone technology. And NATO still, when it comes, for example, to fighting a war in the air and other aspects of warfare, we can still help Ukraine in that area. So we can still help each other. A lot is happening, and more Ukraine is integrated, let's say, in sense of interoperability and standards with NATO. But when it comes to the full NATO membership, the honest answer there is that at the moment there is no unanimity on that. That's not new.
What should I add? Well, many countries have been speaking today about the desire to see Ukraine a NATO member country. I think the majority of them. Not one single person said they don't want that. At least publicly they wouldn't say that. And General Secretary was quite open about that. When it comes to UN NATO membership, unanimity is required. When it comes to the EU membership, we do see this unanimity. When it comes to NATO, not yet. But well, I think most of NATO allies understand that NATO needs Ukraine as much as Ukraine needs NATO. It's probably a long talk. We could spend some time talking about that. I think even Russians need Ukraine in NATO because it can be painful for them if Ukraine isn't in NATO.
Mr. Secretary General, what was your position, especially since Ukraine drones are sometimes flying over NATO countries? Is that something that you've discussed with President Zelensky? Are you encouraging Ukraine to continue the strikes? And for President Zelensky, specifically, if you could comment on today's strikes on the day of the Economic Forum, what's the signal, what symbol are you guys trying to send?
Well, Ukraine is now so successful that Putin is only able to organize a 9th of May parade with an official presidential decree by this president. So this is basically how far you got. And I think for 2 hours you allowed him to do it, and to then end it in 1 hour 55 minutes. So he didn't take a risk. But putting that aside, I think Ukraine is increasingly successful, both when it comes to the front line, but also when it comes to making sure you are able to take out some of the key capabilities and capacities of the Russians to continue with the war. When it comes to sometimes incursions into NATO airspace, let's not forget where it started. This started with Russia's reckless war of aggression against Ukraine, starting in March 2014 and then followed up in late February 2022 with the full onslaught. So whenever that happens, that's what is behind it. And everybody in NATO realizes this, and we know that Ukraine will do everything to minimize the impact.
Well, as regards Latvia, Lithuania, Estonia and Romania, I think we've agreed with them to prepare experts. There are dates already identified for them to come out there to share the experience, much in the way they did in the Middle East. This will also help to prevent further challenges if these come to be the kind of challenges they've been witnessing because of drones in the aspects of relevant countries. We will be helping them with interceptors, with our knowledge. Now, as regards, I think you asked about something else.
If you could comment, I know you have on social media.
About
Saint-Petersburg. Yes, please.
Well, frankly speaking, I'm not tracking Putin's itinerary every day. We are just responding to the strike against Ukraine. I think we've been justified with our strikes. 24 hours ago, we had a massive attack and we responded. But we do respond exclusively against oil refineries or justified military targets.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has reportedly sent an urgent letter to Donald Trump as Russia threatens fresh retaliatory strikes. In the reportedly secret letter, Zelensky warned that Ukraine is running dangerously low on critical air defense systems. Zelensky reportedly admitted that Ukraine depends almost entirely on the United States for ballistic missile defense capabilities. Kyiv has now reportedly requested additional Patriot PAC-3 missiles and more advanced air defense systems from Washington urgently. The letter was also distributed to members of the U.S. Congress as Ukraine pushes for faster military aid approvals. Volodymyr Zelensky's letter read, and I quote, "The current pace of deliveries through the Pearl program is no longer keeping up with the reality of the threat we face. I ask for your help in protecting Ukraine's skies from Russian missiles. I, on behalf of the Ukrainian people, respectfully ask the President and the U.S. Congress to remain engaged. And to help us secure this vital tool of protection against Russian terror, Patriot missiles PAC-3 and additional systems to stop Russian ballistic missiles and other Russian missile attacks." Unquote. Zelensky warned that current Western weapons deliveries are no longer keeping pace with the scale of Russia's escalating military threats.
Today I spoke with Ursula von der Leyen. I am grateful for her support. Air defense is the top priority. We are also preparing a special format with the European Union, the drone deal, a very promising format. It is impossible to imagine Europe's security without Ukraine. Today, members of the United States Congress also visited Ukraine. It is important that America continues to support Ukraine and that American representatives come here to Ukraine and see with their own eyes what is happening and what threats exist, especially after the Russians carried out a particularly brutal, massive strike overnight into Sunday. This week, I prepared a special letter, a letter addressed to the President of the United States and to Congress. And yesterday, the letter was officially delivered to the institutions in Washington. It is quite rare for the leader of another state to address both the President and Congress of the United States simultaneously with a letter. But the situation now requires action, swift and effective action. It is important that America hears Ukraine. We understand that much of the world's attention is currently focused on the war in Iran. But the war here in Europe must also be brought to an end, a very bloody war that is already in its fifth year at full scale. And the sooner we are able to provide greater protection against ballistic threats, the sooner we will be able to make diplomacy work. As long as Russia continues to rely on missiles, its interest in diplomacy is not real. We must correct this, and we can do so only together with America. Ukraine is grateful to America for all its support, and Ukraine will be even more grateful for a dignified peace and guaranteed security. All of this is possible if there is sufficient determination.